A cruel jest, an impossible invitation. He laughed at the housekeeper before all. Only come if you have a gala gown. She remained silent until the night of the gala. When the doors opened, the orchestra's sound faltered for a second. Wealthy eyes, raised glasses, cutting whispers, and a presence no one expected. Who is this woman crossing the ballroom as if the place were hers? Why does the millionaire, so self-assured, now avoid her gaze? Between the chandeliers? Gleam and the kitchen's dust, a reckoning is born. Humiliation, pride, and a secret sewn stitch by stitch. What if the gown was not merely clothing, but an entire story demanding a voice? Prepare to witness the power of an entrance that shifts hierarchies and destinies. The ballroom of the Sterling Grand Hotel on Manhattan's Upper East Side was a showcase of crystal and marble where Alex Sterling measured his own success. On that cold, dry August night, the charity gala promised to gather hotel industry investors, city officials, television personalities, and the network's most productive employees. Alex adjusted his tie knot before the mirror in the executive washroom, feeling the silent weight of expectation he had carried since childhood. His father had built the hotel empire brick by brick, negotiation by negotiation, and now it was Alex's task to prove that the Sterling name still signified order, efficiency, and proper distance between those who paid admission and those who served champagne. The air conditioning hummed softly, holding the ballroom's temperature at a precise 66 degrees Fahrenheit. Alex knew every detail of that space. The polished Carrara marble floor, the baccarat crystal chandeliers hanging from the ceiling like snared constellations, the brocade silk curtains that hid the windows facing the avenue below. Everything there communicated a message that needed no words. Success, tradition, hierarchy. He breathed deeply, sensing the subtle aroma of fresh lilies and luxury essences that adorned each table. Everything was in place. Everything, save for the unease that had gnawed at his stomach since he awoke. Out in the service corridor connecting the kitchens to the main ballroom, Alara Vance folded white towels with precise automatic movements. Her hands knew that fabric better than they knew her own face in the mirror. 3 years working on the hotel's housekeeping team had taught Alara that every object had its place, every stain its solution, every problem its patch. She kept a black-covered journal in her worn backpack, filled with notes on improvised repairs, re-sewn hems on housekeepers' uniforms, small mends on event curtains, adjustments to the edges of bath towels that would be discarded for a single loose thread. Alara's mother, Rosa Vance, a seamstress from Astoria, Queens, had taught her daughter that dignity was neither bought nor borrowed. It was meticulously constructed, stitch by patient stitch. When Rosa died of cancer 3 years prior, she left her daughter a box of memories containing fabric scraps, colorful threads, and the 2 silver needles that had belonged to her grandmother. Alara transformed that inheritance into a precise methodology. Each repair carried a record. Every reclaimed scrap was authorized in writing. Every unpaid extra hour meticulously documented in her personal spreadsheet. This was not born of distrust, it was self-preservation. In the world Alara had navigated, a poor woman's word held less weight than a stamped receipt. That August afternoon, as the communications team rehearsed the gala's ceremony, Alexander Sterling traversed the service corridor en route to the kitchen. He intended to personally inspect the evening's menu, ensuring every detail upheld the family name he bore. Alara stood there, folding the last towels, her worn housekeeping uniform frayed at the edges, her scuffed work sneakers betraying double shifts and stringent economies. Alex saw her and, for a fleeting moment, registered something unfamiliar, perhaps discomfort, perhaps guilt, but he could not name it. Instead, he let slip a phrase intended as irony, yet landing with the sting of venom. "If you have a gala dress, you may attend my party." The utterance came with a half-smile, the kind that never quite reaches the eyes. Alex continued onward, leaving the corridor in silence. He did not witness Ilara cease folding the towels. He did not observe her hands tremble imperceptibly. He did not see the moist sheen that emerged in her brown eyes before being swallowed by a resolute blink. Ilara did not respond. She merely registered two things mentally: the humiliation and the condition. And as Alex vanished behind the glass doors that cleaved their worlds, Ilara made a silent, unyielding decision. Vivian Holloway, Director of Public Relations for the Sterling Group, had observed the entire exchange, leaning against the corridor wall, feigning a check of her mobile phone. Vivian, 42, held an MBA in hotel administration, sported consistently impeccable nails, and wielded a smile that served as a professional instrument. She also possessed a plan. For months, she had been crafting a strategy to reduce costs in the housekeeping department and outsource services, freeing up funds that, within the fine print of contracts, would revert to consulting firms such as Holloway Solutions or Synergy Corp, with ties to close associates. The hotel's overall balance sheet absorbed these inflated expenses, cleverly distributed across maintenance, decor, and premium event experiences. For the scheme to proceed smoothly, it was imperative to maintain the existing hierarchy, preempt any surprises, and preserve Alex Sterling's image as an unassailable executive. For Vivian Holloway, employees like Ilara Vance were mere spreadsheet figures, entirely replaceable. Vivian knew Alex Sterling was vulnerable to the board, investors fixated on metrics and dividends. Justifying outsourcing with compelling data would secure Vivian a hefty bonus and contract shares. Ilara Vance, however, posed an issue. Her productivity consistently exceeded average. She worked swiftly, never absent, never complaining. Dismissing or transferring her without cause would prompt inconvenient internal inquiries. Alex's remark, though, presented an intriguing prospect. Should Ilara act inappropriately, Vivian would gain the needed justification. The week before the gala, Ilara worked in silence. After shifts, instead of returning to the Astoria Queen's apartment she shared with her retired aunt, she stayed an extra hour in the hotel's linen storage. There, amidst stained towels and frayed sheets, Ilara collected discarded textile scraps. She formally requested maintenance authorization to utilize textile scrap for uniform prototyping, attaching unpaid overtime and a repurposing proposal projected to save $15,000 annually on new linen purchases. Mr. Miller, the 60-year-old manager with a prominent belly and weary demeanor, signed the document unread. He dismissed it as another employee project destined to fail. A supervisor logged material entry and exit in the internal system. The request remained archived with stamps and initials. Ilara photographed each stage, saved proofs as PDFs, and printed everything in duplicate. One copy she stored in her aunt's kitchen drawer, the other inside her black-covered journal. With those scraps, Egyptian linen, presidential sweet satin, event curtain cotton, Ilara designed, cut, and stitched a gala gown. Not at the hotel. In the cramped room she shared with her aunt, under a yellowish glow from a discount store desk lamp, she labored night after night. She unpicked seams, measured, adjusted, and hand-stitched with invisible seams, learned from her mother. This was no caprice. It was a deliberate plan to fulfill Alex Sterling's imposed demand. To enter the ballroom with head held high. If challenged, she would prove with official letterhead and stamp that nothing was improperly acquired. The gown was completed on the eve of the gala. Ilara hung it in the built-in closet, beside her worn navy blue uniform. Aunt Clara, 73, retired from textiles, touched the fabric with trembling fingers, tear-filled eyes. "Your mother would be proud," she rasped. Ilara did not reply. She simply embraced her aunt, inhaling the scent of coconut soap and talcum powder that always calmed her. That night, lying on the double mattress she shared with Aunt Clara, Ilara could not sleep. She heard the rumble of cars on the street, the distant bark of a dog, her aunt's soft snore, and she felt, in her chest, a blend of fear and resolve that words could not contain. The night of the gala arrived, cold and dry, typical of the NYC winter. The sky was clear, studded with stars, and a full moon hung over the city like a watchful eye. Alex Sterling adjusted his rented designer suit. Yes, rented, because his father always maintained that spending money on event attire was a waste, and descended to the ballroom at precisely 7 o'clock. The space was already aglow, with live jazz music performed by a quartet of NYC session musicians. There was an area reserved for honored employees, an old group initiative that distributed parchment certificates and symbolic $300 bonuses. Ilara Vance was on the list of honorees. Her productivity index, calculated by number of rooms cleaned, absence of missed shifts, and 0 complaints, was the highest in the department. The digital ID badge, updated on the hotel's internal application, indicated conditional access to the ballroom. When Ilara presented herself at the service entrance at 7:30, the security team checked the QR code on their tablet. Her name appeared with a green banner stating "Recognize staff." That sufficed. She crossed the glass door, each step acknowledged by the organization as normal event flow. The dress Ilara wore had no excessive sparkle, no embellishments, no daring neckline. It was a long gown, straight cut, with 3/4 sleeves and a high collar. The repurposed fabric formed a discreet mosaic of textures: raw linen on the upper part, graphite satin on the bodice, cream cotton on the skirt. The drape was flawless, shaping Ilara's body without constriction, leaving her free to walk with ease. She wore no high heels, only black patent leather ballet flats bought at an outlet. Her hair, loose, fell in natural waves over her shoulders. No makeup beyond a nude lipstick, no jewelry beyond a pair of silver hoop earrings that had belonged to her mother. She entered the ballroom without haughtiness, but also without shame. Alex circulated among the guests with the ease of one who knew every square foot of that space. He spoke of suite occupancy rates, new spa services, expansion plans for the northern coast. He laughed at investors' jokes, accepted praise from authorities, posed for photos with local celebrities. He no longer thought of the phrase he had uttered in the corridor days ago. He only perceived the effect of his own gesture when several gazes converged on the entrance and a murmur altered the atmosphere. Someone whispered. Another turned their head. A third discreetly pointed. Alex followed the direction of their stares. Ilara had entered. Alexander Sterling felt his stomach clench. It was impossible. That was the cleaning employee, the woman in the worn uniform, the one he had humiliated without a second thought. And now she stood there, in the center of the ballroom, dressed as if she belonged. There was no ostentation. There was no defiance in her gaze. Only a calm, dignified presence that seemed to say without words, "You gave me a condition, and I fulfilled it." The ballroom, accustomed to whispers of etiquette and hierarchy, parted. People stepped back, forming an invisible corridor. The phrase spoken by Alex, once anecdotal, now created a public conflict. He had extended an invitation, mocking. She had met the condition, and now everyone waited to see what would transpire. Vivian Holloway, across the ballroom, perceived the situation even before Alex. Her eyes narrowed. This could not be happening. Not tonight. Not on the eve of the outsourcing announcement. If Alara drew attention, if she became a topic of discussion, Vivian's entire scheme could unravel. She crossed the ballroom with swift strides, clutching her champagne flute as if it were a weapon. She approached Alara before anyone else could speak with her. She smiled, that professional, chilling smile. "Alara," Vivian said in a low, firm voice, "I need you to withdraw to the service wing. Your attire might confuse the guests." Alara met Vivian's gaze. She did not flinch. She did not lower her head. "I have authorization to be here," she stated calmly. "I am on the honorees list." "I understand," Vivian responded, maintaining her smile. "But protocol dictates uniforms for the service wing. This gown is not in accordance." "This gown," Alara said, "was crafted from material authorized by the maintenance department. I possess the documents." The silence surrounding the two women grew dense. Vivian felt the floor tremble beneath her stiletto heels. Documents. The word echoed in her mind like an alarm. She glanced around, noticing that some nearby individuals had ceased conversation, now observing the scene with curiosity. She needed to quell this quickly, before it became a spectacle. But before she could speak again, a man approached. Tall, gray-haired, gold-rimmed spectacles, a bespoke suit. It was Maxwell Campbell, the American investor whom the Sterling Grand Group had been courting for months for an international expansion partnership. "Excuse me," he said in English with a Texan drawl, before switching to measured Portuguese. "This gown, is it made from repurposed materials?" Alara turned to him, surprised. "Yes," she replied. Maxwell smiled, a genuine smile that brightened his sun-kissed face. "I've been seeking pieces like this for quite some time, upcycling with intelligent design. Where did you acquire it?" Alara hesitated. She had not anticipated that question. She had not expected interest. Vivian seized the silence to interject. "Mr. Campbell, I apologize for this misunderstanding. This is a hotel employee, not a guest. I will arrange." "An employee?" Maxwell interrupted, raising an eyebrow. "So she works here and still creates such pieces? Remarkable." He turned to Alara. "Seriously, where can I find more such pieces?" Alara felt heat rise in her neck. She wanted no part of this, no attention, only to fulfill the condition, prove her worth, and return home. But the words escaped before she could contain them. "I made it," she said softly. "You made it?" Maxwell repeated, now visibly intrigued. "You sew?" "Yes." A small circle formed. Other guests, drawn by curiosity, approached. Alexander Sterling, observing from afar, with a tense jaw, finally walked towards the group. His heart beat fast, erratically. This was spiraling out of control. Vivian cast an urgent glance, but Alex ignored it. He stopped beside Maxwell, forcing a smile that convinced no one. "Mr. Campbell," he said with a polite but firm voice, "I trust you are enjoying the evening." "Immensely," Maxwell replied, without taking his eyes off Alara. "Especially now. This young woman possesses true talent. I know collectors in New York who would pay handsomely for such pieces." "She is our employee," Alex said, and "our" sounded like possession. "A talented employee, then," Maxwell retorted. He drew a card from the inner pocket of his blazer and extended it to Alara. "If you ever wish to export your work, seek me out." Alara took the card with trembling fingers. Maxwell Campbell, CEO, Sustainable Luxury Ventures, an Austin, Texas address. She looked at Alex, who stared back with anger and something unidentifiable, perhaps fear. Then she looked at Vivian, no longer smiling. The public relations director seemed like an ice sculpture on the verge of cracking. "Ilara," Vivian said, low and controlled. "We need to speak, now." "No," Ilara said, surprising herself. "I am not leaving. I have every right to be here." "You are causing a scene," Vivian insisted. "I am—" Ilara countered, her voice trembling, but not from fear. "Or was it the person who said I could only come here if I had a gala dress?" The silence around them became absolute. All heads turned to Alex. He felt his face burn. Those words, cast into the service corridor as a cruel jest, were now returned as a public accusation. Vivian attempted to salvage the situation. "This is clearly a misunderstanding." "It is not," Ilara cut in, looking directly at Alex. "You said I could attend your party if I had a gala dress. I made one, with authorized materials, and I am here." Alex Sterling found himself speechless. For the first time in years, no ready answer, rehearsed phrase, or diplomatic escape came. His mouth opened, then closed. His throat felt parched. Around them, whispers swelled. Someone quietly questioned the truth. Another remarked on the perceived disrespect. A third murmured about a presumptuous employee. Yet glances of surprise, admiration, and curiosity also mingled. Maxwell Campbell observed Ilara as one might a rare discovery. "I would be keen to see more of your work," he stated, puncturing the silence. "Do you possess a portfolio?" Ilara hesitated. Indeed she did. An Instagram profile, established 6 months prior, where she posted photos of pieces crafted from discarded fabric. She did not use her own name, employing the pseudonym Rethread NYC. Her following numbered 200, primarily amateur tailors, fashion students, and sustainability enthusiasts. It was nothing professional, nothing to contend with established brands. Yet it was hers, authentic. "I do have a profile," she conceded, "but it is merely a hobby." "A hobby?" Maxwell echoed. "With this caliber of finish? Share the profile." Ilara softly uttered the name, Rethread NYC. Maxwell extracted his mobile phone and typed. He located the profile in seconds, scrolling through the images. He paused at a blazer fashioned from repurposed dress shirt scraps, then a skirt assembled from silk squares. His eyes widened. "You created all of this?" "Yes." "From remnants?" "Yes." Maxwell directed his gaze toward Alex Sterling. "Were you aware you harbored such a designer within your hotel?" Alex offered no reply. Vivian Holloway, beside him, felt panic ascend her spine. This could not be transpiring, not in this manner. She had spent years constructing a network of inflated contracts, shell companies, and illicit agreements. Should Ilara gain prominence, should inquiries begin regarding the hotel's resource management, or why cleaning costs remained so exorbitant while talented employees languished, her edifice could collapse. She needed to act, swiftly. "With all due respect, Mr. Campbell," Vivian interjected, forcing a smile, "we must adhere to event protocol. Ilara is a valued employee, yet internal matters necessitate resolution prior to any public exposure." "Internal matters?" Maxwell reiterated, his brow furrowing. "Such as what?" "Image authorization, corporate material usage, labor compliance," Vivian enumerated with practiced haste. "The Sterling Grand Group champions transparency and legal probity. We cannot present an employee without contractual safeguards." It was a shrewd maneuver. Vivian disguised her attempt to silence Ilara as corporate due diligence. But Ilara, who had spent 3 years observing, noting, and documenting, remained unfooled. "I have authorization," she stated, her voice steady. "I have the documents proving all materials were obtained legally. I have a record of unpaid overtime that compensates for the time used to create the dress. And I have authorization from the maintenance manager to use scraps that would otherwise be discarded. Vivian blinked, visibly unsettled. You documented everything? Yes. May I see? I can retrieve them, Alara replied. They are in my locker in the changing room. No, Vivian said quickly. It's not necessary now. We can address this later in a private setting. I would like to see them, Maxwell stated. If there is documentation proving she acted within legal bounds, what is the issue? Vivian opened her mouth, but no sound emerged. Alex beside her finally regained his voice. Alara, he said, and the name sounded foreign on his tongue. Can you bring the documents? Alara looked at him. She saw something unexpected in Alex's eyes. It was not anger, it was curiosity, perhaps even respect. She nodded. Yes. She walked across the ballroom under the gaze of dozens. Her legs trembled, but she did not stop. She passed the decorated tables, the bar where servers offered expensive drinks, the empty dance floor. She pushed open the door leading to the service corridor and walked to the women's changing room. She unlocked her locker with the key hanging from her neck. Inside, beyond a spare uniform, was a transparent plastic folder. Alara took it. She took a deep breath and returned. When Alara returned to the ballroom, the folder in her hands, the atmosphere had shifted. Small groups had formed, conversations hushed, glances oscillating between curiosity and unease. Alex stood in the same spot, hands in his pockets, shoulders tense. Vivian had moved several steps away, conversing urgently with a man in a gray suit whom Alara recognized as the hotel's corporate counsel, Mr. Harrison. Maxwell Campbell waited with his arms crossed, a patient expression. As Alara approached, he was the first to speak. May I see? Alara opened the folder. Inside were copies of hotel forms, stamped and signed. Authorization for textile scrap removal dated 3 weeks prior. Photographic records of materials before and after. An unpaid overtime spreadsheet complete with supervisor signatures. Proof of event access obtained via the internal system. Everything was organized, everything legible. Maxwell took the papers, examining them one by one. He nodded slowly. This is more professional than many contracts I've encountered, he commented. He looked at Alex. Do you train your employees to be this organized? Alex did not respond. He was staring at the documents as if they were texts in a foreign language. Vivian, beside Mr. Harrison, whispered something Alara could not hear. The counsel looked at the papers, frowned, and shook his head. Vivian insisted. Mr. Harrison said something that made her face blanch. She turned, looked at Alex, and in that gaze, there was urgency, almost desperation. Alex, she called, approaching him. We need to talk, in private. Later, Alex said, his eyes still fixed on the documents. Now, Vivian insisted, lowering her voice. It's important. Alex finally met her gaze. He saw something in the public relations director's eyes that made him falter. Fear. Vivian Holloway never displayed fear. She was the woman who brokered deals with formidable investors, who pacified irate clients, who quelled image crises with calculated smiles and perfectly chosen words. But now she was afraid. Why? Very well, Alex conceded. He looked at Alara. You can wait here. I'll be right back. Alara nodded. Alex and Vivian walked away, heading towards a more secluded corner of the ballroom. Maxwell Campbell remained beside Alara, thoughtfully flipping through the documents. Your meticulousness is remarkable, he observed. Such diligence is rare. I learned to cultivate it, Alara replied. When one lacks the means for legal counsel, one must become their own advocate. Maxwell smiled, but it was a sad smile. A harsh, undeniable truth. In the corner of the ballroom, away from curious eyes, Vivian gripped Alex's arm tightly. "You must put an end to this," she hissed through gritted teeth. "Now." "Shut down what?" Alex asked, confused. "She's right. I said that phrase, she fulfilled it. And she has documentation proving she did nothing wrong." "It's not about right or wrong," Vivian retorted. "It is about what this could unleash." "Unleash?" Alex repeated. "What are you talking about?" Vivian took a deep breath, calculating her words. Should inquiries begin into how she obtained access to materials, into the functioning of the housekeeping department, into the operational costs, they will uncover, she paused, searching for the precise word, inconsistencies. Alex stared at her. The sound of jazz in the background seemed distant, muffled. "What kind of inconsistencies?" "Nothing egregious," Vivian quickly asserted. "Merely administrative matters that could be severely misconstrued." "Vivian," Alex said, and there was something new in his voice, something cold. "What kind of inconsistencies?" She averted her gaze. "Supplier contracts. Costs that might appear inflated. Yet everything falls within legal parameters, I assure you. It is merely that an external auditor, examining without complete context, could raise superfluous questions." Alex felt his stomach clench. He had known Vivian for 5 years. She had been recruited by his father during the era when the elder Sterling still commanded the enterprise. Always efficient, consistently delivering results, perpetually devising swift solutions for intricate problems. But now, observing her, her thinly veiled nervousness, her trembling hands, Alex discerned something he should have perceived much earlier. She was lying, or at the very least, concealing a significant truth. "I am ordering an audit," Alex declared, surprising even himself. "What?" Vivian's eyes widened. "No, it's not necessary. I can handle—" "I am ordering a comprehensive audit of all housekeeping, maintenance, and supplier contracts," Alex reiterated, his voice now imbued with unwavering resolve. "First thing tomorrow morning." "Alex, please, think this through." "I have." He turned and walked back to where Alara and Max waited. Vivian stood alone, feeling the world crumble around her. The audit began the following Monday. Alex hired an external firm specializing in financial forensics for hotels and resorts. 3 auditors arrived at 8 in the morning with laptops, spreadsheets, and a list of documents for review. Vivian attempted to delay, arguing it was high season, that the team was overstretched, that it would be better to wait until the next quarter. Alex did not yield. He wanted answers. He needed to understand why a cleaning employee had managed to create something extraordinary from discards, while monthly reports showed rising costs in the department. The auditors worked in silence, installed in a second-floor meeting room. They requested files, verified invoices, cross-referenced dates. On the 3rd day, they called Alex. He entered the room feeling his heart quicken. The 3 auditors were serious. One of them, a woman in her 50s, with reading glasses hanging from her neck, pointed to her laptop. "Mr. Sterling," she said in a neutral voice, "we found irregularities." Alex pulled up a chair and sat. "What kind?" "Contracts with newly established companies, addresses that repeat across different invoices, duplicated services under distinct descriptions. Waste collection routes indicating volumes inconsistent with the hotel's actual occupancy." She paused. "And a pattern of payments to a consulting firm whose majority partner is related to Miss Vivian Holloway." Alex closed his eyes. He took a deep breath. "Are you certain?" "Absolutely. We cross-referenced bank data, income tax returns, State Department of Corporations filings. Everything points to a systematic overbilling network." "How much?" Alex asked, opening his eyes. "Over the past 2 years. We estimate something between 800,000 and 1 million US dollars. The silence that followed was heavy. Alex looked out the window, at the bustling city street below, cars passing, people hurrying. He thought of his father, who had built this business with sweat and integrity. He thought of his own arrogance, of the phrase tossed in the corridor, as if words carried no weight. He thought of Alara, carrying scraps and documents, protecting her own name because she knew no one else would do it for her. "What do you recommend?" he asked. "Immediate dismissal of the responsible party, commencement of administrative proceedings, communication to the relevant authorities, replacement of problematic contracts." Alex nodded. "Prepare the full report. I will handle the rest." When Vivian Holloway was summoned to Alex Sterling's office on Thursday afternoon, she already knew. She entered with an erect posture, her pantsuit impeccable, but her eyes betrayed her. Alex sat behind the mahogany desk, hands clasped, face unreadable. He offered no chair, no water. He simply pushed a folder across the desk. "Read." Vivian picked up the folder, opened it. She saw numbers, dates, names, her name, her brother-in-law's name, the addresses of the shell companies. All there, organized, irrefutable. She closed the folder slowly. "I can explain." "No need," Alex said. "The numbers explain themselves." "It was all legal," Vivian tried. "Consulting is a common practice in the sector. Phantom consulting is not," Alex cut in. "Companies registered under a relative's name are not. Overbilling is not." Vivian opened her mouth, then closed it. For a few seconds, she stood there, holding the folder as if it were a shield. Then, slowly, she placed the folder back on the desk. "I will contact my attorney." "Do what you deem necessary," Alex responded. "But effective immediately, you are suspended. Security will escort you to your office to collect your personal belongings. The legal department will contact you regarding the next steps." Vivian said nothing more. She turned and exited, her head still held high, but her shoulders subtly slumped. Alex remained alone in the office, gazing at the folder on the desk. He felt a strange mixture of relief and nausea. Justice was being served. But the price had been high, and he knew that in a way, he was responsible. If he had paid attention, if he had listened instead of judged, perhaps none of this would have transpired. Ilara learned of the audit 3 days later, when she was called to the Human Resources office. She entered nervously, convinced she would be fired. After all, she had caused a scandal at the gala, exposed the owner, challenged a director. But the HR representative, a young woman with curly hair and a gentle smile, simply asked her to sit. "Ilara," the young woman said, "the administration would like to discuss a proposal with you." Proposal. The word echoed in Ilara's mind. Not dismissal, proposal. What kind of proposal? "Mr. Sterling wishes to develop a line of sustainable products using repurposed hotel linens and uniforms, and he would like you to lead the project." Ilara blinked. She didn't understand. "Weed?" "Yes, with a formal contract, a competitive salary, and conditions for you to register your brand." He mentioned something about Rethread NYC. Ilara felt her chest tighten. This couldn't be real. It was a trap. It was a trick. What was it? Why would he do that? The HR representative hesitated. "I believe you should speak with him directly." Alex was waiting in the third-floor meeting room. When Ilara entered, he stood. He looked older, more tired than on the night of the gala. There were dark circles under his eyes. His tie was loose, and the sleeves of his dress shirt were rolled up to his elbows. He gestured toward a chair. "Please, sit." Ilara sat, rigid. Alex sat on the other side of the table. "I owe you an apology," he began, his voice coming out hoarse. "What I said in that hallway was cruel, unnecessary, and unjust. I have no excuse." Ilara said nothing. She simply waited. "You made me see things I should have seen a long time ago," Alex continued. "Not just about how I treat people, but about how this company operates. The audit found problems. Serious problems. And if you hadn't had the courage to appear at that gala, if you hadn't documented everything, I would never have discovered it." "I didn't do it for you," Ilara said, low. "I know," Alex replied. "You did it for yourself, and that's exactly why it worked." He pushed a document across the table. "This is a contract proposal. I want you to develop a sustainable product line for the hotel. You would have a regular supply of materials that would otherwise be discarded, your own atelier within the hotel, creative autonomy, and a share of the sales profits. Additionally, I would like to create a sewing training program for other interested employees. Stipends, tools, materials. You would help coordinate." Ilara took the document. She read it once, then again. The numbers were real. The clauses were clear. There was even protection for her to register the Rethread NYC brand in her own name, with the hotel merely as a commercial partner for collections made with the company's materials. "Why are you doing this?" she asked, looking at Alex. He sighed. "Because it's the right thing to do. And because I want this place to be what I always claimed it was, a place that respects people." Ilara folded the document and placed it in her bag. "I'll think about it." "Of course," Alex said. "No pressure." But Ilara already knew the answer. She knew it from the moment she entered that room. Yes, she would say yes. Not for Alex, not for the hotel, but for herself. For the mother who taught her to sew. For the aunt who still shared a full-size mattress with her. For all the women who worked in silence, invisible, waiting for someone to truly see them. Ilara signed the contract a week later, sitting in the same meeting room, with a lawyer by her side, reviewing every clause. Alex was present, as was the new head of human resources, a serious woman in her 50s who had temporarily replaced Vivian. Everything was explained, every term, every condition. When Ilara signed on the last page, she felt her hands tremble. Not from fear, from something she couldn't name, perhaps hope. The atelier was established in a basement room of the hotel that once served as a storage space for antiquated materials. Alex Sterling authorized its complete renovation. Walls painted crisp white, LED lighting optimized for intricate handiwork, expansive workstations, professional mannequins, and industrial sewing machines. Ilara Vance meticulously selected every element, researching prices, comparing brands, and negotiating with suppliers. She dedicated 2 weeks solely to planning the space's intricate layout. Her vision was a space that was both highly functional and inherently welcoming, a sanctuary where creativity could flourish uninhibited. The Rethread Initiative scholarships were announced internally by late October. 15 coveted spots were offered to employees eager to master fundamental cutting and sewing techniques. Classes were scheduled twice weekly, commencing after regular shifts. Upon course completion, participants would receive a formal certificate and the prospect of engaging in remunerated projects within the Rethread NYC program. Ilara had anticipated 5 applications, 20. She ultimately chose the 15 most committed individuals, scrutinizing not resumes, but the raw sincerity of their handwritten letters of intent. The inaugural cohort began in November. They comprised housekeepers, porters, culinary staff, and security personnel. Individuals accustomed to strenuous labor, intimately familiar with wariness, and profoundly understanding of every opportunity's true worth. Ilara instructed them as she herself had learned, with unwavering patience, diligent repetition, and profound respect. She demonstrated the art of fabric selection, precise measurement, and waste-minimal cutting techniques. Basic stitches evolved into intricate patterns. She spoke of her mother, Rosa Vance, and her skilled hands, of dignity meticulously woven, thread by thread. By early December, the premier collection of the Rethread NYC Sterling Grand line was complete. 10 distinct pieces, 3 blazers, 2 skirts, 3 blouses, and 2 dresses, each crafted exclusively from discarded linens, towels, and uniforms. Each piece was singular, bearing a tag that elucidated its material origin and underlying narrative. The collection was showcased in the hotel's lobby boutique, priced accessibly yet equitably. It sold out within 2 days. Production for the second collection commenced without delay. Alex Sterling observed every development closely, yet without interference. He appeared at the atelier once weekly, inquiring about class progress and any requirements. Ilara noted his subtle avoidance of direct eye contact, as though a vestige of shame still weighed upon him. She had not entirely forgiven him. Whether complete absolution was attainable remained uncertain. Yet she respected his discernible efforts toward change. For now, that was sufficient. By mid-December, Maxwell Campbell returned to New York City for a crucial business meeting. He specifically requested a visit to the atelier. Ilara welcomed him with coffee and homemade cookies crafted by Aunt Clara. Maxwell meticulously examined the collection pieces, engaged in dialogue with the student apprentices, and posed detailed technical inquiries regarding sourcing and logistics. Before his departure, he presented a proposition. "I wish to bring your creations to the United States. I possess established connections with specialized sustainable fashion boutiques. Would such an expansion be of interest to you?" Ilara looked at him, then at the students working in the background, then at the sewing machines that hummed softly. "Yes," she said, "but with one condition." "Which is?" "A portion of the revenue will go to the scholarship fund, so that more people can learn." Maxwell smiled. "It's a deal." The second Sterling Grand Annual Charity Gala took place exactly 1 year after the first. December again, dry air, full moon. The ballroom was adorned with the same white flowers, the same jazz music, the same waiters serving champagne. But something was different. Alexander Sterling perceived it in the details. The cleaning staff wore new uniforms, crafted in Ilara's atelier with modern design and quality fabric. The honored employees were not segregated in a separate wing, but mingled among the main guests. And at the center of the ballroom, in a specially arranged space, there was a small exhibition of pieces from the Rethread NYC line. Ilara arrived at 8 in the evening, this time not through the service corridor, through the main entrance. She wore a new dress, crafted by herself, in shades of navy blue and silver. She was accompanied by Aunt Clara, who wore an ensemble also created by her niece, and 3 sewing students, invited as representatives of the project. Alexander received them personally at the door, without the rented tuxedo, without an overly tight tie, just a well-cut suit and a sincere smile. "Thank you for coming," he said, looking at Ilara. "Thank you for the invitation," she replied. There was no embrace, no prolonged handshake, only a respectful nod of equals, and that meant more than any eloquent speech. The event proceeded without incident. Investors lauded the sustainable initiative. Dignitaries posed for photographs beside the displayed pieces. Maxwell Campbell, present once more, finalized an international distribution partnership during the cocktail hour. Local media covered everything, transforming Ilara's story into a headline. From housekeeping to haute couture, NYC hotel employee becomes sustainable fashion star. But Ilara knew the headline was incorrect. She had not become a designer. She always had been one. She had merely needed the space to demonstrate it. Near midnight, when most guests had departed, Alexander found Alara alone in the exhibition area, gazing at one of the dresses draped on the mannequins. "You've created something incredible," he said, approaching her. "It wasn't just me," Alara replied. "It was many people, the students, the suppliers, even you." "Even me?" Alexander repeated, surprised. "You chose to change," Alara said, looking at him. "That isn't easy." Alexander swallowed. "I still think about that phrase. Every day." "Me too," Alara admitted. "But not with anger, with gratitude." "Gratitude? If you hadn't said that, I would never have found the courage to make the dress. I would never have entered the ballroom. I would never have shown the world what I was capable of." She paused. Sometimes the worst things that happen to us are the very ones that push us forward the most. Alex remained silent. Then, softly, he said, "I don't know if I deserve this forgiveness." "It's not about deserving," Alara replied. "It's about choosing to move forward." They stood there, side by side, looking at the pieces created with remnants and hope. And in that shared silence, something healed. Not completely, not forever, but enough for both of them to breathe without carrying so much weight. The following months brought changes Alara had never imagined possible. The Rethread NYC atelier grew, from 15 students to 30, from 2 machines to 10. From a basement room to a renovated ground floor space, with a street-facing display window where pedestrians paused to watch the seamstresses work. Alex implemented new policies at the hotel, quarterly audits across all departments, contract transparency, a recognition program for employees who proposed operational improvements. The internal culture shifted slowly, resisting in some corners, flourishing in others. Vivian Holloway faced administrative proceedings and investigations by tax authorities. She lost her position, lost credibility, and became legally accountable for the proven misappropriation. Aunt Clara, with Alara's help, managed to rent a larger 2-bedroom apartment in Sunnyside, Queens. It wasn't luxury, but it had large windows, natural light, and space for each of them to have their own bed. Alara set up a small home atelier where she worked on personal projects on weekends. Aunt Clara tended to the plants on the balcony and baked cakes that Alara brought for her students. It was a simple life, but it was theirs. In April of the following year, Alara received an invitation to give a lecture at a fashion college. She refused 3 times, believing she lacked sufficient credentials. But the atelier students insisted. Aunt Clara insisted. Even Alex, during one of his weekly visits to the atelier, suggested she accept. "You have a story that needs to be told," he said. Alara finally relented. The lecture took place on a Saturday afternoon in the Parsons School of Design auditorium. 150 people attended, mostly young students, but also a few professors, journalists, and curious onlookers. Alara ascended the stage, trembling. She gripped the microphone with both hands. She looked out at the audience. She took a deep breath, and she began to speak. Not about success, not about fame, but about scraps, about dignity, about the mother, Rosa, who taught her that beauty could be born from leftovers, about the importance of documenting, of protecting one's own name, of not waiting for permission to exist. When she finished, there was applause. But more importantly, there were questions. Genuine questions full of curiosity. How to begin? How to deal with a lack of resources? How to find courage? Alara answered each one with honesty, and when she descended from the stage, 3 young women waited for her with portfolios in hand, asking for advice. She sat with them in a nearby cafe and spent 2 hours analyzing designs, suggesting adjustments, encouraging them. She left feeling tired but light. Alex Sterling, who had watched the lecture discreetly from the back of the auditorium, waited for her at the exit. "You were incredible," he said. "I was terrified." Ilara confessed. It didn't show. They walked together to the parking lot. Alex hesitated before getting into his car. "Ilara, can I ask you something?" "You can." "Did you truly forgive me? Or did you just let it go?" Ilara pondered for a long moment. "I think both," she replied. Forgiving doesn't mean forgetting. It means choosing not to let the grievance define who you are. Alex nodded, eyes welling up. "Thank you," he said, his voice cracking, "for everything." "You're welcome," Ilara replied. And it was true. She owed him nothing. But she also held no grudge. She simply moved forward, carrying rethreads and hope. 2 years after the first gala, Ilara Vance opened her own store. It wasn't large. It was 400 square feet in a gallery in the West Village, with a glass storefront, polished concrete floors, and reclaimed wood shelves. But it was hers. The sign at the entrance read, in golden letters, "Rethread NYC, Ilara Vance." Below, in a smaller font, "Sustainable stitching, beauty born from leftovers." The grand opening took place on a Saturday afternoon. Ilara invited her students, Aunt Clara, a few journalists, and friends she had made along her journey. Alex Sterling also attended, accompanied by Maxwell Campbell, who was in NYC to finalize new contracts. They arrived with a gift, a professional, full-body mannequin with an iron base and raw linen finish. Ilara cried upon receiving it. Not from sadness, from relief, from accomplishment, from gratitude. The boutique showcased pieces crafted by Ilara and her students from the hotel's program. Each item bore a tag detailing the material's origin story and the name of the seamstress responsible. Prices were set fairly, calculated to compensate the labor honorably while remaining accessible. This was not fast fashion. This was apparel with a soul, and people responded. Within a month, the boutique was turning a profit. Within 3, there was a waiting list for custom orders. In 6, Ilara needed to hire 2 employees to manage the demand. One of these employees was Jessica, a former housekeeper from the Sterling Grand Hotel, who had learned to sew in Ilara's program and discovered a talent for embroidery. The other was Danielle, a 22-year-old who had lost her job during the pandemic and found a new opportunity in the atelier. The 3 worked together, listening to music, discussing life, creating. The space smelled of coffee, new fabric, and possibilities. Ilara never forgot her origins. She continued to visit the hotel's atelier weekly, teaching classes, guiding new students. She continued keeping her documents organized in folders, knowing that the word of a woman like her still required proof. She continued wearing her mother's silver earrings, touching them whenever fear or doubt crept in. And she continued sleeping soundly, because she knew she had built everything with honesty. Alex, for his part, transformed the Sterling Grand Hotel into a benchmark for ethical management within the sector. He implemented circular economy practices, partnered with local communities, and embraced radical transparency in financial reports. He gave interviews on responsible leadership, wrote articles on how a public mistake could become an opportunity for change. He never exploited Ilara's story for self-promotion. He always spoke her name with respect, as someone who had taught him more than any MBA. They did not become close friends. They did not dine together. They did not exchange birthday messages. Yet they maintained a mutual respect built on honesty and recognition. And that was sufficient. More than sufficient. On the night of the boutique's grand opening, after everyone had left, Ilara stood alone in the empty space. She sat on the polished concrete floor, leaned her back against the cool wall, and looked around. She saw the shelves displaying pieces she herself had created. She saw the mannequin, a gift from Alex and Maxwell. She saw reflected in the glass storefront her own face. She no longer saw the woman in a worn uniform, afraid of being invisible. She saw a creator, an entrepreneur, a teacher, a daughter who honored her mother, a woman who had transformed scraps into art and humiliation into strength. Alara touched her mother's silver earrings. She smiled and whispered to the empty space, to the memory of Rosa Vance, to all the women who sewed in silence. We did it. And in the bustling streets of New York City, under the vast winter sky, the story of a cleaning employee who became a designer, yet remained true to herself, continued to be told. Not as a fairy tale, not as a miracle, but as a testament that dignity is neither granted nor received. It is built, stitch by stitch, scrap by scrap, with steady hands and an unyielding heart. The end.